Hi, I'm Jamie Flinchball, host of People Solve Problems, and today we have our special guest, Lee Moore. Lee, how you doing?
I'm well, Jamie. How are you?
I'm great. So glad to talk, always glad to talk to you. Um, Lee is the director of Foundry and Fab Materials for Qorvo. He's had a lot of different roles in the organization, moved on, experienced new things, and his personal brand as a leader is built around coaching and organizational transformation. And I can attest to that being his brand promise is fulfilled.
Appreciate it.
So we're going to start with you like to be highly collaborative in any direction in the organization. So how do you approach collaboration or any involvement of others in problem solving efforts?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Jamie. So the first thing I do is figure out what problem am I trying to solve, right? Look at that, and then who cares about the problem, right? How does it affect others? Who has influence over the problem? Who cares about the resolution of the problem? Um, I've seen, other approaches, and this one tends to work the best of really dissecting and understanding and taking that time to figure out what problem I'm trying to solve and who needs to be involved.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different factors in there, and I want to ask, so who cares isn't always the same person who can influence. And
Exactly.
and so how do you deal with that when the people who care about it and the people that can influence are different? How do you pull that together?
Yeah. So, the first thing we do is the data, right? What problem we're trying to solve, and how does the data, right? So the people that tend to care, right, may not be able to influence, but it's a burden to them. And then if we look at the problem we're trying to solve and we see who cares about this, and it could be is yield improvement, it could be steps in a factory, it could be tech transfer, whatever it is. Um, and the influencers, it's a little bit easier when there's no capital involved, there's no expenditure, right? We just say yes, we're going to redo this, and it's good. And it's also bringing the influencer along, right? Letting them understand why this is important, what the ROI is, and how this will build their team better, right? Move the needle, so to speak. Um, and there are some folks that just don't want to be involved, and that's okay. We still have a problem to solve, right? And then on the back end of that, as we solve the problem, we get it done. We get high level agreement of resolution, and then the influencers tend to become believers at that point. So
Well, I think the data there you mentioned is pretty important. So this isn't even in problem solving yet. This is sort of building up to problem solving to sort of justify the problem.
yeah,
And it's one thing if somebody's frustrated about something or doesn't like it, but that's not justification for investing resources into problem solving. Doesn't mean it's not valid, just that it's not justification. So the data can be pretty useful. How do how hard is it to find the data you need to really justify putting effort into a problem?
yeah. Typically, it brings itself, right? So I have a lot of sayings, as you know, and people would come into my office and believe we got a problem, right? And do you have data to support this? Well, no. Well, you have an opinion that we have a problem. So then it's really, what is the problem? Is it yield? What's the goal? Right. So goal will tend to derive itself to the data. So if we have a goal, a yield of 95% in the factory, all right, believe we're yielding low. How do you know? Show me the data. So we've done a really good job of investing in MES systems and being able to go and understand what data yields itself to the goal. And so we tend to go on that. We also look at it from our mind management system of KPIs with knowledge workers. So the data is we need to get a contract resolution by X day. So we put that goal, and the data is we're looking at a calendar, right? So it's pretty easy and built-in check-ins. Hey, how are we doing on this? What do we need to do? Is there a quality check that leads us to an escalation path where we have to do something different? So getting the data is not always pretty easy, like as a factory. But if you put a goal, an end date, you have expectations, check in, makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I love that it's not even just a step in the process. It's like, hey, do we have a problem? Well, what's the data to support it? It's right out of the gate. Let's speak in facts and observations and not imagination.
Yep.
So that's great. So, we're talking about solving problems with others. So how do you decide your role in that, right? When are you a sponsor? When are you a coach? When do you own it? How do you determine what role you want to play around a problem?
Yeah. So in my mind, I tend to work out a race, right? Am I accountable? Am I responsible? Should I just be consulted or influenced? Is it in my sphere of control? Is it a problem that was brought to me from another organization that needs me just to maybe coach someone along, right? Go to the influencer and make them a little more aware of the problem in a different approach. And it's also bringing in the right people, and the right people are not always the problem solvers or the experts. It's the people that you want to grow as well. So I love bringing a fresh set of eyes to a problem. I have a new person on my team, a recent college grad. I love bringing her onto problems because her mind is just open, right? And oh, well, what about this? And then to answer your question, if I'm not accountable, responsible, shouldn't even be consulted, not necessarily informed. I don't need to know about this. I I set up and ask the person, okay, what problem are you trying to solve? How can I help? And what are your expectations from me? Right. And if your expectations is me to solve the problem, that's not coaching, right? That's just me being your problem solving, your tool, and I'm not going to be your tool for that. Then it's then we set up the coaching, right? How do we the PDS say what? Let's make a plan for them. Go do, go study, go adjust. Let's see where you are and how we bring that team together. And what I've learned, Jamie, too, is sometimes you bring the team together, you might not always bring the right team, or you may only need a relief pitcher for one inning, right? You just
Mhm.
need this one expert to come in and or person to come in and say, "Hey, do this," and they've done their job and they can move on. They can leave the problem, still part of the team, and uh, but it's really understanding the kind of the roles and responsibilities as well.
Yeah. Well, I love how you talked about Racy because so often, and this is a pet peeve of mine, I guess, but everybody thinks about Racy as this long, drawn out, complicated template that you have to fill out around a process, and that is one of its primary uses. But what you're describing is just using it as a simple decision-making framework in your head, and I think that's, I'd love to see more people think, we have to make a decision. What's the framework for the decision? It doesn't even have to be written down. It's just in our head. We go through it. It's a mindset, and then we make a decision using a consistent framework. Where am I on the ratio on this?
Exactly.
So you brought up being a coach and all that. So coaching, as you know, is pretty important in my view, and it's part of your brand, as you mentioned, as a leader. So how do you assess the capabilities, the mindset, the skills of the person you're coaching? I mean, you even mentioned an example of a new college graduate. Well, you mentioned their mindset was great, right? But maybe their capabilities and experience is low because they're new to this. So how do you go about assessing what you're working with and then how to add value as a coach?
Yeah. So to me, coaching is enabling learning, right? When I'm asked what is coaching to you, it's just enabling learning. Um, and when I'm assessing it, goes back to what problem am I trying to solve? Is it something critical that needs to be done today because it's going to hurt the company brand, it's going to hurt our customer, it's going to cost us millions of dollars to in scrap or rework? You need to go to the person that can solve the problem immediately. If it's a learning opportunity where there is a little bit of time, we're, as you know, we're doing some risk mitigation assessment. And so we have a little bit of time to think. So for this example, the recent college grad, here's what I need done. Here's the end state. Here's how you should start. And this is the deliverables. Knowing that they're going to come back to me and say, where could I go get this? And this is how I coach the staff level person on my team. I give this person that name. Go talk to the staff category manager and ask them where they would find it. And then in my coaching of that person, I'm letting them know the expectations of how they're going to develop the younger generation and how we move the ball forward with learning. Um, so that's a pretty basic one when I'm assessing talent. The other thing too is history, right? If there's some people that I've problem solved with, I've been a part of a team, and they've maybe been a little more disruptive or bristly, right? I have to think: do I have time for this in this problem solving activity? Do I need that person? Yes or
Mhm.
no, right? And
Right.
that'll influence it. But if not, right, there's times where it's like we want to move forward in a way, but then there's times where you want to bring the bristly person in, and you want to continue to massage the edges. And this is why we're doing, and this is the fruits of our labor. So it's really, it goes back to my very first statement. What problem are we trying to solve? And then once I start building the team, I want to make sure that every problem solving activity develops people, right? If we're just there solving problems, that's great. But how are we doing it better the next time? How do we look back and learn with after action reviews? And what did they glean from it? Did they take something from that problem solving that they're now thinking how I think a RACI or a H step or something like that? Are they now just using it mentally, and it influences their behavior?
Yes, you brought up a point that is frequently on people's minds, which is essentially coaching someone that really doesn't want the coaching, um, to put it that way. So, um, so and as you mentioned, sometimes you just choose not to. Sometimes you say, "Hey, at this moment, it's not worth it," to take the time to do that. But it's always a struggle. It's never easy by almost by definition. So I'm sure people would love to hear, what are your, whether it's techniques or mindsets that you adopt for yourself or approaches to coaching someone that really isn't open to that coaching.
Yeah. So when I'm assessing it, I really have to put myself in check, right? Because I have to be adaptable. And I know that as a coach, you've coached sport teams as well, and you got so many different players, and each person that you're coaching needs coaching differently, right? Is how they receive information, how they want information. And it's learning the personality. It's a lot of times it's not that they don't want to be coached, they don't know how to be coached, right? And sometimes we don't know how to coach them and deliver the message. Or um, if you look at disc type training, right, and there's a C personality or that just needs all the information. Okay, I need to make sure I take the time. This is what we're doing, and this is why. If there's a creative person in creative space, you have to really understand: do they just really not want to be coached and they're stuck where they are and they don't want to grow, or is it the approach and the history that they've been delivered from other coaches? Because as you and I've talked in the past, not all coaches are good coaches. They think they are, right? And we assign them as a coach. And then there's that history of somebody's just had a bad experience or maybe multiple bad experiences. And I have to recognize that and understand that, okay, this person here, they want to solve the problem because they brought it up. They looked at the data, they're missing their goal. They know they want to do it. Maybe they just don't know how. Maybe they're embarrassed of failure. Maybe they've tried something before. Maybe they've had a manager put them down. So if I'm coaching somebody not on my team, that makes it a lot easier, right? Because I'm not doing anything punitive. If there's someone on my team, you have to go through the PDSA and say, okay, let's make a plan, let's do it. And if you're getting resistance, stop there. Hey, why? What's going on? Why? Where are we at here? Oh, I'm too busy for this, right? I
Mhm.
get it, but you still have a problem, whether you're too busy or not. You have a problem. Let me help you solve it so it's easier the next time. So I think it's really the human side of it. There is figuring out the why. Why do they not perceive want to be coached?
Yeah. Well, and I think I just want to highlight something you said there because I think people really need to hear this is when you're coaching people that don't want to be coached, it's not about a tip or a trick. It's about your own mindset and checking yourself, as you said, right?
Yeah.
And I would usually often say it as you have to decide to respect the person, even if you didn't before. You have to decide to respect the person,
Yep.
and a lot of what you described there is having empathy for the person, right? It may not be entirely their fault why they're in that situation and not wanting to be coached. It could be their past experiences, and you have that empathy, and it changes how you show up as a coach. So I think that really is worth, emphasizing is the secret to coaching people that don't want to be coached is in your own mindset as a coach,
Exactly.
not in theirs. So that's fantastic. So before we wrap up, I was wondering if you want to share any examples of what you've seen, sort of bad problem solving, and what can be learned from that. Whether it's examples with no innocent names, right? But whether it's examples or just observations around what are some of the bad practices you see out there.
Yeah. So my favorite story of this is, and I didn't prep for this. This just lives with me. Is we were problem solving, had a A3. We were teaching our lean journey there, and some folks took a A3 class and decided, okay, we're going to go solve a problem. What problem are we trying to solve? And it was something, right? The data wasn't there, and they started assigning they're in the bottom right, and actions and owners and dates, and they're emailing people, hey, did you get this done? People are like, what are you talking about? So I had those people come to me. It's like, Lee, this A3 here. Somebody assigned me a task within an A3. I have no clue what the problem is, why they assign, who are these humans in our company? And so the biggest failure is not understanding who you need on the team, and who's affected by the problem. And it goes back, another one I like is a SIPOC, right? I do that in my head, and so I've actually, on that team, I was like, okay, before you ever do another A3, do a SIPOC. Who's your supplier? What's the input, process, output, and customer there? But the biggest failures are not getting people involved early on. The intention's right, the motive is right, and then maybe the second one is making problem solving punitive, right? Where you've got to go do an A3 and you got to have a certain number by a certain date, and if you don't, your year-end review is going to be terrible, and people are just now filling out a piece of paper, and they're not problem solving; they're just pencil whipping with things. And
Right.
those are probably my two go-to examples on bad act. So
Yeah, it's you try to build accountability and you try to build engagement, and there's always a quicker path, right, to basically just shove it down people's throats. And sometimes it requires a little patience to get people there. So when we see things like A3s used as a weapon,
yes.
it can go in the wrong direction very fast. So great, right? So fantastic stuff. I love what you shared from your experiences as a leader. Any last words of advice for people that want to improve their own coaching or their own problem solving?
Yeah, don't stop learning, right? Continue practicing, right? Jamie, you got the saying, practice makes permanent, right? Or just continue to practice, evolve. What went wrong? How do you do it? And really look in the mirror, do the after action reviews, own yourself, right? How are you doing, and are you truly invested in it? Or are you doing it because it's your job? And if you can truly invest yourself, it becomes a lot more fun and fruitful, and it's just continue practicing. And there's going to be people that don't want coaching, maybe, but those are the great opportunities of why, and spend the time with the people that you can develop as well. So,
Love it.
thanks for having me on, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Love your optimism, forward thinking, and keep learning, Lee.
Yeah, will do, Jamie. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the People Solve Problems podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. Visit jflinch.com for more episodes and other content. And continue to join us on your podcast app, of course. We greatly appreciate your feedback through reviews and ratings. Consider expanding your understanding of problem solving with Jamie's book, People Solve Problems: The Power of Every Person, Every Day, Every Problem. Available on Amazon. Until next time, keep learning, innovating, and solving problems.